Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, the senior fellow at the Media Research Center. And one of the great things about the team at the Media Research Center is how they do the analysis and the assessment to look at how the hypocrisy of the liberal progressive media, how they tend to jade the truth that we know and give a spin on their perspective of what is happening, not just domestically, but also all around the globe. And one of the great examples of that comes from this week when we learned that the North Korean leader, Kim Jong Un, made a trip to China, secretly, of course, but it was his first trip out of the country since he came to power in 2011. And he went to China to meet with Xi Jinping, who was the president of China. They met in the Great Hall of the Peoples. They even had a nice, really big state dinner there as well in Beijing. But if you look at what the media is saying, if you read the New York Times, you listen to CNN, this is all praising Kim Jong Un with some masterful diplomatic maneuver and believing that he now has some high ground as we prepare for talks between South Korea and North Korea, as well as the imposing future talks between President Donald Trump and Kim Jong Un. This is just the same as when the liberal progressive media was praising Kim Jong Un's sister, who is the minister of propaganda, during her appearance at the Winter Olympics, her unspoken word charm offensive. And, you know, I have to find it really somewhat perplexing to realize that how would the liberal progressive media praise someone that is a modern day version of the Nazi minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, someone that is putting a spin on the fact that North Korea is starving its own people to death. But also, we must never forget that this is the same North Korea that recently murdered an American citizen by the name of Otto Warmbier. They, illegally charged him, tried him, convicted him. They tortured him, sent his body back. He was in a coma, and assumingly he died. See, I don't see this as an opportunity for Kim Jong Un to have a moral high ground. I see him as a very scared, a very nervous leader running to his big daddy, which is China. Because there's a difference. There's a new sheriff in town. No longer do you have the strategic patience policy of the Barack Obama administration, which allowed North Korea and Kim Jong Un to do whatever he wanted. He now sees that if he stands up, the United States of America will stand up even stronger against him. And those sanctions are starting to hurt him. And so what he has sought to do is go over to China and try to see if they will have some type of support, some type of backing for him. But I think that this is an opportunity for us to turn this against China. The fact that Xi Jinping has embraced a brutal dictator should be something that the United Nations should sanction him about. I think that we should pursue a course of action that gets China removed from the UN Security Council as a permanent member. And anyone that wants to be an ally to North Korea, they should be shunned. They should be isolated just the same as North Korea. And we should be looking at further economic means and further sanctions that we can in place even on China. Because the metaphor that I like to use, and I think that that's what we saw this week, is that China is really the big crack house, and North Korea is just the pit bull. And we need to also be focused on that crack house, because then it will render that pit bull guarding that crack house irrelevant. And that's what we see happening. We need to go into these talks with North Korea understanding that we have all the cards in our hand. As long as we don't take any major military action, as long as we continue to squeeze and put the pressure on North Korea, but yet show that we do have a military deterrent capability and we are willing to use it, then we have really put Kim Jong Un and the Chinese in a very precarious situation. Now is the time when we need to rally all of our allies in the Pacific Rim to stand up against not just North Korea, but also China and what they have been doing with their unfair trade practices and their regional hegemonic expansion into the South China Sea, building these islands and fortifying them with military equipment to include military airfields. Surface-to-ship missiles are one of the major armaments that they're putting there. That threatens our maritime service and fleet. So I don't think that President Trump finds himself outmaneuvered. I think that what we are seeing right now is a very nervous, a very scared Kim Jong Un who is starting to feel the effects of these sanctions. And he is hoping that China will continue to try to maybe buck these sanctions. But China cannot afford to have an implosion in North Korea. The last thing that China wants is a Korean peninsula that is friendly to the United States of America and Japan. The other thing that China does not want is an incredible influx of refugees across that shared border with North Korea and the loss of the hydroelectric power that fuels and powers a lot of power generation facilities in those provinces in northern China. We have all the cards in our hands. And I wish that the liberal progressive media would be a little bit more pro-American in their stance and stop praising a brutal dictator who murders his family members, murdered an American citizen, starves his own people to death. President Donald Trump is no longer adhering to the policy of strategic patience, which got us in this mess in the first place.